approach all things.
With reason.
Reason.
Reasonable.
Dissent.
Reasonable Dissent with the Black Wolf and Copus Malini. Okay.
All right, so this is an exhausting topic, building a community.
This ought to be fun. Building a community.
The way you say that sounds so much fun.
Oh, yes. Yes, excitement, yes.
I mean, it is exciting to build a community, but it's a daunting task.
Yes.
When I think about the idea of like building a community, first you have to say under like what premise.
Mm-hmm. Well, you gotta set up what are the rules? What are the rules of the society?
That word, I hate rules.
Exactly. Everybody hates rules.
Yeah.
Everybody hates rules. But here's the thing about it is that without those rules, there's no room to grow.
Without the rules, there's nowhere to grow. There's no way to grow. I don't know if that's true. How does that make sense?
So here's the way at least I've conceptualized it. So there was an experiment run. I don't remember all the details about this, but there was an experiment run where they grew some trees in a perfect environment so far as the air was concerned, the soil was concerned, everything was perfect. But these trees, no matter what, they still fell over. They didn't grow. They weren't strong.
Okay.
They were weak. And what had happened was the environment that they had grown those trees in had no wind, no resistance.
Oh, okay.
You see?
Sure.
And so what ended up happening was that they fell under their own weight. They didn't have anything to
So
cause them to grow deeper roots.
Sneak the idea that rules and resistance are synonyms.
Well, they're
There's always a guy with a hat. And the guy with the hat has rules.
That's a pot calling the kettle black. Wait a minute. I do have a black hat in this case.
No, but I kind of see what you're saying, and I do understand. You know, there's certain
without some pressure.
Yeah.
Right. Then there's no strength.
Wasn't it pressure enough to start a whole community?
Yeah, that's pressure. But when it's anarchy, then you gotta.
What do we define as a community? I mean, there's like online communities, and then there's microcosms of that online community. Like there's YouTube.
Subcultures.
Is that a community? And then like there's the conspiracy theory community. There's the beauty community.
Beauty community.
The beauty. I just started the beauty community. Yeah, I mean, there's different subcultures and all that.
There's subcultures within subcultures.
Do you belong to any communities yourself? Black Wolf? Do you have a...
Black Wolf has always been a lone wolf. Aside from claiming a faith, that's it. I don't claim any political standpoint. I'm a non-bandwagoner, so I don't really...
You're not attached to any parties. Okay.
Yeah.
So not joining any parties.
Right.
Do you consider yourself a creative?
I consider myself creative, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Creative or a creative? Because there's a phrase that millennials have used. Are you a millennial? Yeah, I think you are, actually, by definition.
By definition, maybe, yes.
So you're a millennial. That's a group you're in. I don't know if you would call it a community. It's kind of an anti-community.
Right. Now we're getting into this identity politics thing that nobody likes to hear.
Yeah, right. I mean...
That's the thing, is you can't really put me into a box.
I'm the same way. I'm the same way. I hate the idea of being part of something.
Right.
But at the same time, like, I want people to listen to our podcast and like that kind of community.
Right. That's
so then you become a cult leader.
Basically, yes. Yeah. Except don't drink the Kool-Aid. We're not selling you Kool-Aid here, okay? We got some ideas. We want you to think about them, but don't drink the Kool-Aid. No, I think that it would be somewhat unjust to say that any one particular community is something of which I am a member. But I would say this, that when it comes down to building a community, I think that it's one thing to have a group of people, and it's another thing to just let them run rampant and do whatever they want without any form of at least basic rules.
Well, I think that, it's fine to have rules and guidelines. I mean, I'm not a big rules person, and I'm a libertarian if I had to be a part of a party.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be as little rules as possible. That would be my philosophy.
You gotta have something like don't kill, don't steal.
You gotta have don't kill, don't steal. Those are decent rules. But then things become a little vague when you think about the idea of stealing. I mean, we've ran into like the whole Napster thing, and that was my coming of age party when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Napster started coming in, file sharing started to come
Right.
in, and there was all this fear amongst the Hollywood elite and the music industry about the internet. They're
Right.
afraid of the internet because the internet was going to be their end. And now there's all these streaming platforms.
Right, exactly.
And they kind of adapted with.
That's the difference between fear and adaptability.
Yeah. But
Sorry to cut you off, man.
Uh-huh.
Soft and pliable overcomes rigidity.
Soft and pliable, for sure when it comes to toilet paper. That's
not where I was headed. That's not where I was headed with that. Yeah, nobody wants a pine cone for toilet paper. But here's the thing. It's like that's actually, again, in here, in the Tao Te Ching, soft and pliable overcomes rigidity. If you get this idea that there's only one way things have to be, right? So we've got a music industry. We have an industry, right? And then something new comes along. Instead of looking at that and going, okay, so how can I use that to grow what I have?
Right.
They look at that as a threat.
They did.
Right.
Then some younger people came around, joined the company, and said,
and that's where that soft and pliability comes in.
Sure.
Right? Because when a tree is young, it's soft, right?
Yes.
It's soft. It's pliable, right? And it can be trained. When it's dead, it gets stiff.
Right. Well, I don't want to confuse corporations with communities because
right.
I do think that a good corporation and a good community
has some pliability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But a corporation has no soul.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As much as they want to manufacture, they got some soul. They don't have.
They don't have a soul. No.
And a community is something that we're real two interesting people to talk about community because we're like anti-community folks.
Almost, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
I like my privacy.
Mm-hmm.
I also crave the companionship of other creative and people that like to mess around with the idea that the idea, not the idea, but the way our world is shaped. Like going back to the pliability thing, going back to people that are not so rigid, people that are interested in seeing something fresh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people like me maybe right now that are retreating, especially in 2020, from society.
Yeah.
Because we see this totalitarian society that's being built, and we envision a life that's a little bit more simpler where we kind of have a community.
Yeah.
But then I lived in the commune before, and let me tell you, the thing about commune is everybody knows your business.
Yeah.
So there's accountability there, which is great, because you can't get away with, going to your day job and acting like a gem and then going home and beating your family. It doesn't work that way in the commune.
Yeah.
You're there 24/7, so that's cool.
Some accountability is useful, but it can get
Well, you also don't want people just walking into your room or
Yeah.
knocking on your door uninvited.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
like, dude.
Yes.
No, I know what you mean. Here's that quote
Just
real quick.
simply too, even if people, in a non-sexual kind of way, like it's nice to have some distance between you and your neighbors. You don't
Yeah.
want people just to feel like it's fine for them to come into your personal space at any time. I do my best work when I'm alone. Like if I'm editing something,
Yeah.
I don't do well when there's a lot of input around me. I like to show something, present it later, and
Get input from
get
there.
some input
yeah.
from there. But while I'm in the process, to get to the flow state, I kind of need to just be focused, and that's the part of community that I get afraid of. I get afraid of my flow being interrupted by all these pesky people telling me I've
exactly
drawn out of the lines
Yeah.
and I need to,
Yeah.
go back and do things their way.
Exactly. No room for creativity at that point. No, and I know exactly what you're talking about. I go down that road almost every day at work. I get so focused on something that I'm doing, and then someone comes up, "Excuse me, what?" And I gotta try to be nice about it. What? Yes.
So you just wrote a book. It sounds like you're interested in reintroducing yourself to society. You're kind of a fringe guy right now. You've got a job where you have social interactions. You have some social clubs that you frequent. You mentioned a comedy one, a cigar shop, places that you go. But you also are a self-proclaimed antisocial sort of
Non-social, not antisocial.
Okay, non-social.
Okay?
Yeah.
There are no bodies in my in my backyard. Okay.
I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying you don't seem like someone that is throwing parties at your house all the time.
I'm not that kind of person. No.
So how important is community to you, being a lone wolf type?
Well, to me, I think that a community is highly useful when it's not possible for a person to stand completely and totally on his own.
Yeah.
No man is an island. And so there will invariably be times when you need somebody's help. And without a community, you won't get that help.
You can't pay for it?
Without a community, you can't get that help. Because even in that community, even if you're paying for it, they're a member of the community.
You can't travel outside of your community to obtain help.
Going where?
To the next community, to
a
civilization.
To a community. To get help, right? Without the concept of community, you won't get help.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Without the concept of, and this is different from a commune, or at least as you've described it, different from being in a commune where there were no rules, right? There was no privacy.
Were rules.
Well, but there was no privacy.
The privacy comes from, it's like being in a large family. You could create your own privacy. I certainly did. But all I'm saying, the closer in proximity that you live with people, the closer that you are with your family, the more they're going to know about your downtime, the more they're going to know about...
They become intrusive.
You can characterize it as intrusive, and they certainly can be if they're abusive types.
Yeah.
But they're not always abusive types. One thing I found is that living there, I was mostly loved. People liked me, and no one really criticized me, but I felt like I was constantly exposed.
Yeah.
Because I was, to an extent. Even if they didn't know what I was doing in there, they knew I was in my room.
Yeah.
And someone always knew where I was at. So
no privacy.
That's to a certain extent, that's not having privacy. It's not as extreme as my neighbors who lived in Koreatown, and they had 8 people living inside a studio apartment. That's truly no privacy.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't take a poop without someone seeing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or jail. I spent a little bit of time in jail. There's no privacy inside jail. that's really having no privacy. So it's different in terms I had a little privacy, not enough, but then, you know, I also don't want to become a boomer who has privacy from their own family because their house is so big
Yeah.
that, you know, they have separate lives living in their room. You
Right.
know? I feel like in every boomer house you have a wife that has her own like little
Right.
fantasy island going on in the bedroom, and a man cave over there. There's a whole another
Right.
world going on, and then who knows what's going on with those kids that they don't pay attention to.
Exactly. I think a lot of times what you're going to end up with, if it is, I think, human nature to both congregate as well as spend time alone.
Yeah.
But those times need to not be enforced. They need to be up to the individual.
Okay.
And so when you start looking at this whole COVID thing that hit, you know, when everyone was forced into isolation, an entire city, an entire state, an entire nation forced into isolation, and then they start wondering why depression and suicide started going up.
Right.
Right? Well, why did it start going up? Because they did not have a choice, you see. And so, too much socialization for a person who, and of course there is a word for this person, but I do not remember it. Too much socialization for an introvert can drive him insane.
Yes.
Right? Too much isolation for an extrovert can kill him.
Yes.
Okay? And so when you put somebody in those positions and they don't have a choice, right? You put an introvert into a party situation they can't get out of, and they're not allowed out of it, or in jail or something like that, and they stay there indefinitely, you will drive them insane.
Right. Yeah, so that's the opposite of community.
Exactly.
It's forcing people into social constructs where community comes together. It comes
They're
together
looking out
usually
for
on
each
a
other.
common goal.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's like, hey, this is our town, and you know we need to have a neighborhood watch. And there's been some things going on lately that are disturbing. So if you see any red trucks, with I don't know.
Yeah,
I
know what you mean.
I didn't want to make.
You're going down that road, but yeah, no, I get
Right.
what you're saying. Yeah.
Let's keep a lookout. Say there's a community there, a
White
neighborhood
unmarked
watch.
van. Yeah.
Then there's also like secret societies, which are communities that I believe are put together like Skull and Bones. You're showing that fraternity. These are going to be powerful people that you're going to maybe rely on inside the future.
Yeah.
Let's do something that we don't want no one to know about outside of this little area. That way, if anyone acts out of line, we can
We
always
have some control over them.
control you.
You ever seen the movie Brotherhood of the Bell?
I haven't. Is that what that's about?
You should watch it. It's about that right there. It's about what happens when you break a rule in that situation, in those kinds of communities, those kinds of clubs. When they give you, these are the rules, and one main rule is you keep your mouth shut. And a guy didn't keep his mouth shut, and then his whole life fell apart. Watch it. It's a really good movie. It's an old movie from I want to say 72.
Okay.
It's an older movie. Really good.
Then you have like creative communities which are formed because of a common interest. Where you're like, we're all musicians. We're gonna come down. We're gonna do jam night on Wednesday.
Right.
And then on Thursday we're gonna have some shows for more of the opening act type people. Bring your shows. On Friday and Saturday we're gonna have the headline shows.
Exactly.
And there's like kind of like a community. They all sort of know each other. They're at different levels of their career, but they kind of build a community.
Exactly.
That's my favorite kind of communities, these creative communities, because there's somewhere for you to go to do your strange thing that annoys your friends and family.
Oh, doesn't it ever? Anyway, yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like, and for me, it's like I get in with the musicians. I get on with the musicians very well. I get on with the filmmakers very well. I get on with podcasters pretty well, even though you're the first one I've ever had a chance to talk to. But it's as a lone wolf, that's what I do. I travel between these. I go between these different groups and different interests. But one of the things about them is that if you do not have rules, then if you do not have some rule of order.
Well, lay down the rules of order to join the Black Wolf community. Which ones you got? You want to join your community?
So, I have a conceptualization of honor. And honor to me involves truthfulness, respect, dignity, loyalty, chivalry, and faith. And chivalry is involves courage, courtesy, and justice.
Sounds like knighthood.
Pretty much, right? Chivalry, of course, has its own history, but what it has become is a focus on those three main things: is courage, courtesy, and justice.
So you value character over anything else when it comes to people being part of your community.
Mm-hmm. If let's say hypothetically I was to set up a community, that would be it. Is that you treat each other the way you want to be treated. Step out of line, you got a problem.
What one violates the character laws in your universe? What if somebody lies to you? How do you deal with a liar?
Me personally?
Well, no, as a community. Let's say you're setting together a community, and lies will happen.
Mm-hmm.
People put on great first impressions. Mm-hmm. Not everybody is truthful all the time.
Right.
Some people are mostly truthful, mm-hmm. and then every now and then feel like they need to lie, and they do lie. They get caught in a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
So then, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. Well, I think mercy falls into the honorable trait of respect and dignity. And the thing is, it's one thing if you have an individual who lied out of fear.
Sure.
Right? But we all lie out of fear.
Right.
But it's one thing if, they screwed up and they're lying because they don't want to face consequences they don't know or they might face. It's another thing if they are compulsive liars. Compulsive liars, my thing would be, you don't get to be a part of this community if we can't trust what you say.
Yeah, so you have to be able to at least confront honesty when presented with it. So if you're caught inside a lie, mm-hmm. then you have to kind of shit.
It's one thing, and it's one thing if what you said you thought was true.
Right.
But so long as you were being honest, okay.
What do you think the most common thing people lie about? Their financials, their relationships with their spouse, their competence.
I think people lie mostly about their
how confident they are.
Mm-hmm. Because they want to portray themselves as, don't mess with me, I'll take you out. It gives them the sense of power as defined in today's society.
You think they lie to themselves about that,
mm-hmm.
and then project that lie to other people, or they...
I think that they're constantly lying to themselves about that. I think that what ends up happening is... And the crazy thing about it is how a positive feedback thing goes, feedback loop goes. When you start to overproject, or you start to project overconfidence, and then you accomplish something, and then you get rewarded for that one thing that you accomplished, and then you project overconfidence again on the next thing, and you succeed in that. But nobody ever hears about the time you got your ass handed to you on a silver platter.
Sure.
You never hear about that.
Do you think that's more of a masculine trait than it is of a feminine trait to overcompensate with confidence? Or do you think women do it just as often as men?
I think women are starting to become more aggressive in a display of overcompetence.
Okay, so that's just showing worth. So it's kind of like...
It's one thing to show worth. It's another thing to say, I'm better than you in all things.
Okay, so display of confidence isn't showing worth.
Your worth is in how you treat people.
Okay, well that's an interesting approach of
Because if I treat you like shit, that's obvious that I'm shit.
Yeah. When it comes to a community, it's much easier to teach like someone that doesn't have any skills. You know how to wash the clothes, or draw on the canvas, or whatever it is you're trying to do, create a beat. You can teach people these things, but you can't teach people to be decent. Or it's harder to. So every now and then you find someone that's
No, you can.
That's teachable, but most people resist their behavior being altered.
In today's society, yes, because in today's society, our ego is what we think we are. We think that our identity and our ego are the same thing, and they're not. And so we tend to attack people based on perceived offenses to our egos. And so we start to project onto those people every grotesquerie we can think of, particularly if it's something about ourselves that we don't like. So I mentioned to you before a time that I was being yelled at by a feminist, kept saying, hit me like you hit your wife, which is funny because I didn't know I had a wife. But that tells me everything she does to men. She would certainly pick up a weapon and start beating on a man if that's how she's going to project it onto me, a total stranger.
Yeah, more than likely. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I'm still kind of dwelling on the idea of people overcompensating confidence, and that being the way that they most often lie. And I think that when it comes to a job resume, that's where you're definitely going to see that.
Here's our resume. Let's see if it's real.
When people are looking for a job, but in just like basic social encounters, I know like men will often present themselves as a scary person. Don't fuck with me, I'll beat your ass, to other men, because there's always the
need to dominate.
The need to dominate. Is that what it is?
There's this goofy idea that we're monkeys. And
that's a goofy idea, yeah.
And so because of that, we walk around the society thinking we're just highly advanced apes, so we're just a bunch of primates, so we're going to act like primates. That's not what we are.
Right. It's interesting, too, that when you take people inside different atmospheres, I personally am going to have a different feeling towards that person. If I meet somebody and it's at work, I'm automatically like, well, here's a team member. I got to learn how to work with this person in a way where
it's collaborative.
It's collaborative, yeah. And you meet somebody and they're at the grocery store. You're like, all right, well, here's another person trying to get the groceries. I'm going to just try to stay out of their way. Yeah. And there's probably no need for us to have a conversation or anything like that. Then you meet someone in a social setting. They're a friend of another friend. And you're like, I wonder if we're a kin in some sort of way because, we have this mutual acquaintance friend. And when it comes to community, I think a lot of times it's all based upon what the community calls itself. So if you call yourself a community that's like Antifa, and that's the name of your community, and you're against fascism, like that's the name,
so they claim,
and the basis. Well, I'm just taking the perspective of somebody that took it for face value.
Mm-hmm.
So I go and I'm like, all right, I'm against fascism.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go to this Antifa rally,
Mm-hmm.
and then they start chanting, and these chants are, I think it's in our nature. To want to like join a chant. That's what feels good to be like inside church.
Chants are very much a part of
like
our nature.
A mantra.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we like it.
Yeah.
We like. Oh, I know the words to this one. Hey,
yeah.
I'm in it.
It's
I'm
easy.
in the group.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, so you start, going along with the chant, and then you start feeling part of the community, and you see everyone's dressed sort of like you. Mm-hmm. You're like, all right, so what do? We all wear black. All right, I can do that. You know, this is sort of dangerous.
Right.
We're trying to.
That's not a community.
But it's not. Why
That's
not?
a mob.
What is it? A mob?
Because
what's the difference between the tribe and the mob? Because what if there's tribes that get together and they got their chants,
and then they go
they
mob another tribe. Here's the thing: when you have, it's one thing to have a community. Okay, in a community, each person does his own thing that is a part of building that community and making it survive and making it stronger. But in a mob, it moves as one mind, a crowd, a single animal that moves for the purpose of destruction.
Yeah, this is the thing with living in the commune, and you didn't show up to your shift, or you didn't work on your shift. It was obvious. Oh, you didn't fill out the log. Oh, you didn't update the computer. Like, what were you doing over here the whole time you were on the shift for 6 hours? Oh, people are calling and complaining, saying that you weren't answering the phone.
Right.
You know, you start to be like, hey, Abraham, what was going on, man? Like, yeah. The other day I came in after you, or I saw you leave the kitchen yesterday. It was a mess.
Right.
What's going on with that kitchen? So, there's that accountability thing I was saying, and you start to get in on each other. But when you're a mob, you put all of the responsibility
on everybody else.
On everybody else, right.
Right. We're moving as a group. We're going to go attack this because this person we decided was not responsible according to the rules that we have set up. But we're not.
Who set up the rules is a good question too.
Exactly.
If I'm a young guy like I used to be, and I'm just joining
I used to be young too.
a dumb group of shit because my friends are doing it, which is something I used to do.
Right.
And I just show up and I'm like, all right, I got the right clothes on. And I hear there might be chicks there. All right, this is cool. Well, so we get to drink on the street, and maybe I might grab some Nikes out of one of these stupid stores. Who cares about this stupid store anyway?
Right, exactly.
And then you're just out there, and you're in the middle of it, and then rules start being told. Oh yeah, well we're also going to break up this store. Wait a second. My best friend's mom owns that store. I don't want to crash that store. Like, that's a good store. It's not Target.
But watch this.
Yeah.
One thing Nietzsche said was that when a man joins a group, he sacrifices his own mind for the mind of the group.
Right. Then you turn the other cheek. You're like, I don't know. Well, since it's open, I do.
Even if you don't go into that store because it's your friend's store,
right,
you'll turn a blind eye to that one while you go into the store next to it.
Right. It could be someone else's friend's store.
Who was the friend of the person that did go into your friend's store.
Right.
Right. So here's the thing, is that you have a difference here between the accountability of a community, right, and the irresponsibility of a mob.
Right.
You see.
All right, so that's a mob by definition because there's no...
What's the difference between Anonymous and Antifa?
What's the difference between Anonymous and Antifa? I mean, I don't know. I think there's probably a lot of people that claim to be both. Okay. I know that Anonymous has attacked big corporations,
right,
and they've done it, on online attacks,
right.
And
now I'm not saying
you don't know who they all are.
Right.
They don't identify. There's no leader. I think that apparently Antifa says the same thing.
Right. But what's the difference?
You tell me.
Antifa has no rules.
Anonymous has rules.
Anonymous has very strict rules.
Really?
Yes.
What are those?
I'd have to look them up, but
there's guidelines on
there are guidelines. If you start to basically, if you start to wave the flag and try to get Anonymous to be your personal army, then they will not support you. But their thing is, yeah, you can be anonymous. Anybody can be anonymous. All you got to do is buy a mask, and yeah, you can be anonymous. But you cannot be a part of the collective, which is the central core part of Anonymous. These are the rules of this group. These are the rules of a hacker. And if you want to be a success in this organization, there are rules that you have to follow. Even without a leader, there are still rules you have to follow.
Right.
With Antifa,
but there's rules in gangs all the time.
In gangs, yeah. But that's a community-like situation until they mob each other.
Right.
And then the rules go out the window.
So do we mob each other when we take our armed forces over to Yemen and drop bombs, and we just become a mob? We're just...
Yeah. Well, in a way, I mean, it's a controlled mob. The difference is, so
there are rules.
Yeah, because the way the
but there's also a playbook for Antifa. There is, like, if you go back to like the college meetings that they have, all these attacks that they're doing on small businesses, they're orchestrated attacks. They teach you how to do them in a way that's effective. Otherwise, the cops would be able to stop this behavior relatively quickly. So it's an organized mob as well.
To a certain degree, maybe, yeah.
Maybe a little less organized than, like,
it's
say,
still, if you
the
watch,
Bloods or the Crips. But,
right.
You know.
Well, so if you look at the way that a mob operates, okay, the way a group of people who have a violent goal, right, looting, destroying, burning down, right. Why haven't the cops been able to stop this? They're not actually doing anything that's according to the rules.
Well, they're also told stand down, the cops in many of these cities.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah, because you have mayors in those cities who are part of that mob.
Exactly.
And that's what happens there. But the only rules these people
very organized.
Yeah, very. But see, what ends up happening is that the only rules this mob is really following, okay? We're not talking about the organized crime aspect of it, which is the mayors. We're talking about the mob itself, the group of people who are the anarchists, the destruction, right? The foot soldiers. The foot soldiers. The only rule they're following is how to make that fire spread quickly.
Yeah, well, that's your job.
How to accurately break that window.
That's the job of a foot soldier. That's the job of, putting someone on the front line of a battle. You know, they're just supposed to go straight forward ahead and create as much damage as they can.
Exactly.
They're sacrifices.
And you can't appease them.
No, you can't.
I like what I think it was Churchill that said, appeasement is feeding an alligator hoping he'll eat you last.
Right.
And you start to see that in this.
Oh yeah, I mean I've seen it being a problem since back in 2017. I think the Seattle and the Proud Boys and Antifa were going against each other. Now, say what you want about the Proud Boys, I'm not a fan of them, but they do have rules, and they do have guidelines, and they do stand for something. They're kind of immature and kind of goofy for me.
I honestly know nothing of them. About them. I have to look them up.
Well, I mean, it started from a comic. I think his name is Gavin McInnes, something like that. He made a joke. They're kind of. I think they're pro-masculine. So they are self-proclaimed chauvinistic.
Hence the Proud Boy. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the pro-America and the pro-gun. So they're kind of Republican in a sense, but not exactly. They're also just kind of a fraternity more than anything, because they don't have hard political lines. They've actually recently gotten together with BLM to collaborate on some ideas that they both sort of are pro. Like one is like mass incarceration. Like, let's work on that. That's kind of a problem that they both see as a problem.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. When you see these communities, they're too big for me. I would never join a giant community like Proud Boys or BLM or Antifa, because that's where I think the corruption really starts to.
What is their driving force? Yeah, or what is the front line the frontline effect of their existence. If the frontline effect of their existence is destruction, then you do not want to be a part of it.
Well, you definitely don't want to be part of a group that, you know, is about destruction. But personally, I was on an even lighter note. I don't like to be part of like a giant group because I feel like you lose your individuality inside that group.
Oh, yeah.
And there's just too much, or a giant community, because there are just, that's why I like, you know, the being part of smaller communities. I've always wanted to be a subgenre artist. I'd never wanted to be a genre
Mainstream.
artist because I feel like you can find more foothold for individuality in a smaller group, and it's really no need to have influence over too many people.
Yeah.
Because then your ideas must be super general.
Yeah.
Unless you're generalist. I'm
Exactly.
not really generalist.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to be careful with that too. But that's hence the Marxist, what do you call it? The Marxist wave that has been hitting our community, our country.
The new wave of Marxism.
The new wave of Marxism, because it's overgeneral, right? And thus,
I think it all
massively.
like stems back to Chicom, the Chinese. I mean, they have so much money right now. I've already seen them eat up the industries that was previously part of like Hollywood. Like they
Yeah.
own Hollywood now.
yeah.
I think that they're just infecting our political system too and getting us prepared for their takeover. They eventually want to take over our country,
Oh yeah.
and they have already bought a big portion of it. So in a sense, they kind of already own it.
Yeah. It's
So I think anyone that gets involved in that, thinking that this is going to be like a some renaissance of America,
Yeah,
and
it's
we're
not
going to
gonna be,
recreate
no.
that.
yeah.
Just take a look. Please just study what's going on in China right now.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's your future.
There's
Excuse me, I gotta grab some water.
no, you're good.
Go ahead, what you're saying?
There's an old TV series from, gosh, I can't remember, early 2000s, Firefly. And Firefly was written by Joss Whedon. And I think Joss Whedon might have come across something scary in his writing. The universe that he created in that show
Yeah.
spoke two languages, English and Chinese. And one of the things that he pointed out one of the things that he demonstrated or depicted in that series was the tyrannical nature of the government, right?
Yeah.
And the poverty of anyone that didn't submit to government control.
This is called Firefly,
Firefly.
and it's
It was a space cowboy type thing.
Okay.
It was a space western type series where they were out there and flying around in space and all this, but they had created Earth had been depleted of all its resources, and so the world had to expand into other worlds, and these other worlds spoke Chinese and English, and
Nice.
and it was a mixed language, it's kind of like here in Houston, you'll hear people speaking both Spanish terms as well as English terms, because of the mixture of the two.
very similar to Los Angeles.
Right.
The city itself is, the angels.
Right,
in
exactly.
Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Right.
San Diego, which means the whale's dick. That's wrong.
Okay. Now, see, that's kind of scary because, I smoke a cigar. It's called Don Diego.
It's not really
Don's
that.
dick?
It was like Saint Diego, but that's a joke from Anchorman.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's.
I have not seen that movie. Some movies are just not my taste.
That's a great movie. Even though I think Will Ferrell's a evil son of a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, community, you're on the honor system. I'm all for that too. And there's got to be some redemption there,
Oh, yeah,
I
of course.
believe. And I think that just comes with honesty. And if people can be honest, then I feel like there's always a path for redemption
Yeah.
with sincerity and honesty.
Well, without redemption, the entire community becomes corrupt. Without the opportunity for redemption, the entire community becomes corrupt.
Yeah.
You know,
When
again,
people talk about a path of redemption, I think that there's different levels to that. Because I think as a society or as a community, we can offer redemption quicker than those that have been personally harmed, where it might take them a longer time for that. Like let's say in our greater community, you stole my car, and the community.
you're always going to hold resentment, aren't you?
I don't know if that's true, if I'm always going to, but I think that the community might have an easier time giving you a path of redemption quicker. But on a personal level, like I might hold a resentment for a longer term. And if you ever wanted to make things right with me, it might take a little bit more effort.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay, and that's kind of how a community should be structured. We shouldn't let that person off the hook.
Right.
You know, they should have to pay their
Absolutely not.
pay their debt back in some sort of way. And I don't think locking people inside a cage is always the best way of doing it.
No, because again, that only spreads the corruption.
Spreads the corruption, yeah.
Makes it worse.
It makes it worse. So what's an alternative to jail? I mean, what can you do to punish someone for committing a crime that doesn't
You know, I've
put them in a system that's like systemically racist?
right. Well, I think that
And what I mean
When
by
you-
systemically racist is not to go along with there's
the
too many-
idea of
there's-
systemic
there's
racism that's
too
being
many
pushed.
black people inside prison, which I do think is true. And that's just a whole nother point. But what I'm saying is that when you enter the jail system, they divide you by race, and they segregate you, and that's based upon not in every jail,
Not
but
what I
that's
saw. Yeah,
but
not here.
that's based upon especially inside prison gangs. So you know, there's white prison gangs, there's black prison gangs. In California, there's Northern Hispanic gangs and there's Southern Hispanic gangs. And there's a big difference between the Norteños and the Serenos. You know, there's conflict between these two.
That may be why they separate them. Though,
So they separate them.
to reduce
But
some of the
if you're just a
violence.
regular person, you're put into a
You put in with the white gang.
you're put in the white
Yeah.
gang, or you put in with the black gang, or the Mexican gang,
But
or
see,
whatnot,
in
and
that
it creates a
situation-
systematic
Exactly.
world of racism where
Mm-hmm.
you might have walked in never even thinking about race, but now it's a daily part of your life. You're
Mm-hmm.
forced to think about, and you're forced to be loyal to
To a gang.
a gang.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where you're now forced into a gang life.
So I don't know how that's a path of redemption
Yeah,
inside society.
That's what you end up with when you have a corrupt system running a corrupt jail system.
Yeah.
What
I
I
mean,
think
there
that-
shouldn't be any gang politics allowed inside jail. Really, that should be.
that's the thing. But you also got to remember, the more rules, the more thieves show up. And so this is why I was saying before about rules. You want to keep them just very simple rules. But the more complex the law gets, the more criminal activity you're going to find. Not just naturally, because you're always going to find somebody breaking the law that didn't exist before, but you're going to find people now doing things because it's against the law. But
So-
what you end up with, I think that what would be useful for redemption would be
Decriminalization of drugs would be a good place to start.
I think possibly, yeah. I think instead of it being instead of it being treated as a medical condition, psychological condition, it needs to stop being treated as a crime. That's my opinion of it. You know, it's because you're dealing with someone who is dealing with psychological or medical issues that
often the time too, it's like someone goes into jail for smoking meth, and we're under the assumption that this person is mentally incapable of living a productive life.
I don't think that's a true assumption, though.
It's not a true assumption, because I've met people that do drugs and, you know, are still members of society, and they might have an addiction, they might not have addiction, they were just caught doing a drug.
Right.
And I don't think meth's a great drug. I've done it before. I don't think it's a great drug to do. I wouldn't recommend anyone try meth.
Yeah.
But I have met some people that do meth and also have a job and also you know, live a productive life.
They were productive, yeah.
And are just as productive as you know, some just maybe sometimes hyper productive.
Yeah, because they were on the meth.
They were on the meth.
Well, that's the thing. Is like there is the who and the what are fodder for the spectator. The why is the question they never want you to ask.
Right.
You know, this person is on meth. No one wants to know why. Because if you can know why, then you can deal with the problem. You can solve a problem. But we're not focused on solving problems. We're focused on.
Well, yes. Why? And I'll tell you, very simple. Is because we live in a society that's addicted to drugs, and it's normalized.
That's
and
an oversimplified why.
People are either on. Well, you're right. It is oversimplified, but it's a great justification for doing drugs.
Yeah.
Is the fact that everybody else is on them. Because you might be doing meth because you're poor and you don't have insurance, but your friend is doing Adderall.
Yeah.
And it's basically the same drug.
Essentially, yeah.
So, you know, the same as like you might be doing heroin, but your mom is on oxycodone. And
but the question still comes down to why?
Because we live empty existences.
Individually.
Now
you start to get into, if we can get to the why.
Right.
Why are you an alcoholic? Why are you a drug addict? Because you're going to be addicted to the same drug this guy over here is addicted to, but for different reasons. And if we can deal with those reasons, then we can start to work away from the drugs and away from the alcohol, because we're starting to deal with these people on their individual levels.
Yeah, exactly. Right? And it is an individual level, because there are people that do drugs that are just not addicts. And if you ask them why, it's because they want to. It's their freedom to. Well, why are you eating a Big Mac? You know, or may not be something great, but you know, we don't throw people inside jail that want to, you know, poop in a litter box and pretend they're dogs.
Right.
We don't make that.
That's a cat, by the way.
Oh. You're right.
But you see, but I think that because here's the thing, is that when we start criminalizing everything, then you start looking at, you start to increase poverty. You start to increase drug use. You start to increase criminal activity, because everything is illegal now. Right? And so now then you end up with your classism right there, where you got these super, you know, ultra low class versus everybody else that's in the middle class and the high class and the lower middle class and all that. And you got these people down here who's got to break laws in order to do anything, but we're not dealing with those people on an individual level. All we're doing is focusing on the group.
We should pride ourselves as a society for keeping our jails as empty as possible, not for the opposite. And as a police force, you know, there should be pride that, oh yeah, we've only had 6 arrests this year.
Yeah, that should be the point of pride.
I mean, it would be beautiful if they were like, oh yeah, we had to take half of the cells and make an art exhibit and allow local artists to put their art up and do that. Or a library, because we've got too many empty cells.
Right. Or even better is if the people that you arrested, you actually rehabilitated. You actually let them learn something. Yeah. You know, that's the thing. It's like, you know, I have a friend who was arrested, and when he was actually an immigrant, and while he was in jail, he studied immigration law.
Sure.
You know, and if he wanted to, he could have come out as an immigration lawyer, but that wasn't his interest. But the thing is, that is an option that these people do not have when you send them into jail with the idea you are a criminal, you will always be a criminal, this is your identity, get used to it.
Yeah, they dehumanize you.
Exactly.
They put up a class system where the guards, are superior than you.
Yeah.
And
instead of working with you.
And what I mean by they dehumanize you is they put you inside a place where you have no privacy.
You're an animal.
No
at this
self-decency.
point. Yeah.
You're not allowed to have an original thought. It's complete conformity.
Right.
And
it's usually the people that are put into like solitary confinement and allowed to have books and paper and pen. Those are the ones that come out a little bit more intelligent.
Right.
You know. But those are rare. Even more rare now.
Yeah. Well.
But that's the thing. I think that if the guards would quit with their ego trip, and everything boils down to ego in this case.
Well, the system is absolutely corrupt. I can't blame the guards because you're 20 years old. You come in. There's 2 vets that have worked that system for 12 years, 15 years each. And then they come in, they teach you how to do it. And for you to question anything, but you're just being sensitive. Oh, you're just being soft. Oh, you're just a rookie. You're green.
Yeah,
and
they
then,
start to beat him down and dehumanize him.
Yeah.
And so shit rolls downhill.
Right.
Yeah.
So our only hope with these prisons and jails are to completely start all over with them. I don't think you can fix that infection. It's already infected.
Yeah. Well, I think what you'd have to do is you'd have to get you'd have to turn them into actual rehabilitation centers where the guy's got a gun, but he's there teaching the inmate.
I mean, if it's privatized systems as they are, then I think that also the family should have the option to shop which prison they want to put their family member into. So if you
I don't know about that because I think that what you end up with in that.
Well, I think you do, and you should have to pay for it instead of us paying for it. Now, if you're
I think that's fair. Yeah.
I mean,
But I think that the family of the criminal should be paying for the incarceration of the criminal. But I don't think that shopping around for the best school is a good idea because what ends up happening at that point
maybe not shopping around, but maybe if there's 4 different prisons, then if the inmate isn't a violent criminal, a repeat criminal,
right?
Maybe they can have some say after they get through the probationary system of what place they're going to learn the most from. Because you can't have all the resources in every single place.
Well, see, I would think that the way that I would, because one of the big mistakes that they make is that first time offenders, they want to shock.
Yeah, that's retarded.
Yeah, and children they want to shock. Children thugs they want to shock by taking them into these criminal environments and having these guys yell at them, and all that does is bolster their ego and reinforce it. So when I walk out of here, I'm going to walk out of here with my jaw sticking out further.
They also don't realize that these people come from hell. So like their family life was hell. This is a vacation.
Yeah.
Even if it's supposedly shocking.
Yeah. Even the inmates think they're doing a good job because they're a part of this. They know what this is about. They're trying to keep these kids out of here.
Yeah.
But they don't understand that it ain't going to work like that. No. All that is, if I come back here, I can be even tougher.
Right.
Right? Instead of that, you take a first-time offender and you make it the last time he's ever offended.
Right.
Right? You take him in and his family pays for it and you go, okay, here's what we're going to do with you. Where's your personality the strongest? And this is what we're going to work on.
Right.
What are you lacking? This is what we're going to work on. You put them through a psych evaluation and then you put them into a lesson that fits.
Exactly.
Because you got a lot.
They got anger management. They got resentment issues. Yeah. Whatever's holding them back. And that's what we do. We need to help people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more people that come out of prison healed,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how wonderful would that be? Is you have this wise old man who now owns a couple of businesses.
Exactly.
And he's telling,
Yeah.
you know, his grandchild, look, I went there and it wasn't easy, but I changed my life.
But I learned.
And I learned.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's where you're going to end up, that's where you're going to end up. But,
Right.
you know, don't think it ain't working there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, put them to work while they're in there and teach them.
Right.
I think that would be more useful to them and to society. And
You
I
don't
think,
need a bunch of wounded people walking around
No.
or locked up.
but see, that I think is useful to a tyrannical environment is to keep people wounded. But I think another thing should be also, or if you wanted to build a good, strong community, is that the criminal owes the victim or the family of the victim. And so if you have so you got a drunk driver who's, you know, out driving and he kills somebody. And, you know, now, you know, he gets 30 years in prison, 20 years in prison,
Right.
maybe even 15 years in prison.
Uh-huh.
But what he doesn't have is a debt to that family.
Exactly.
And I think that's a necessity. He owes that family because he took a life.
He could be spending that 15 years giving 30% of his pay over to that family and at
Or-
least reimbursing them
Right.
in a financial
Or
level.
working for them
And-
directly.
Or working for them directly. I don't know if that would always be a great way of handling things because people
Yeah, because then you can get
real
cruel
personal
family. Yeah.
and all that.
But see, what you end up with at that point is now you got this guy going, okay, if this is how they act when you fuck up, I better not fuck up again.
Right.
You know?
But I mean, that money could be paying for counsel. You know, if you take 30% of the guy's pay for like the next 10 years until you hit that number, not you know, there's got to be some sort of number to it. It should be
Thieves for certain should be working for the family.
It should be the right amount of money to pay for counseling for that family to deal with whether grief counseling that they need, you know, for that situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. The way the system is set up right now is it's a tyrannical government. It's set to not
Increase
kill
criminal.
people. It's set to keep those prisons full and keep people in fear. And it's created really more criminals. You know, my father spent his whole life inside prison. He got out when I was 28 years old. I met him for the first time since I was 3. We had written a couple letters here and there while he went through different prisons. And, you know, he came out, he had a cell phone, driving his mom's car, like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And I'm out here in the world
Yeah.
and everything. And, you know, I met him, and it was cool to meet my dad, to like kind of be like, oh, I can see how I'm sort of like this person. But what was clear to me is he was completely unprepared for re-entering society. And he ended up...
He was shielded from the hard work.
Yeah, he ended up getting a job and going back into substance abuse very quickly. And then his all of a sudden I couldn't get a hold of him anymore. So I think he probably ended up back in prison or dead.
Yeah.
But based on the behaviors that he was telling me, you know, he was buying hookers and he was doing drugs.
Yeah.
That's what he did. A few months right out of prison after
Wow.
being, you know, locked away for 2 decades.
That's what happens when mommy and daddy step in where they shouldn't. That's...
Well, you know, my grandma's not a rich woman. He wasn't...
But she protected him. That's the issue. Is that she protected him from the fact that, look, you screwed up, now you got to work to grow.
That's not true. What happened is he borrowed my grandma's car to see his son, you know, for a day. But then he ended up getting a job working in fracking, where he made pretty decent money. One of the only jobs he could really get straight out of prison. And he like lived in like a labor sort of camp with a bunch of other like roughneck kind of men.
Oh.
And
Okay.
he spent all his paychecks my hotel rooms and hookers and drugs.
Okay.
So I had nothing to really do with my grandpa.
I see. Okay, so that's my mistake then.
But he was also an older man. I mean, this was happening when he was like 50 years old. So it wasn't, and my grandma was really old. So it wasn't her responsibility to take care of this man that was beyond middle age, who just came out of prison. And it wasn't the responsibility of the state, but I think in a not a utopian world, but I don't believe in that, but just in a just world, he would have at least came away from that prison system. They spent so much time with some skills and some sort of preparation for what life would be like. Like, you don't let somebody who, for whatever reason, had to be locked away that long, I disagree with the length of the sentence, but he was a repeat offender, so what are you going to do? But you don't let them just be free.
Yeah.
Like, if they've been locked up for 2.5 decades,
pendulum effect.
You gotta take them out and let them work 5 hours a day inside public, and then maybe half a day, and then they gotta sleep here for a year. You gotta reintroduce them to society. It's a completely different world.
Yeah.
Too much freedom is going to kill you.
Exactly, and I think
he was a trained slave,
Yeah, particularly when it's too much freedom after too much incarceration. But I think that what you end up with is in a society where you can be so quickly and easily branded a criminal, then, and in a society that embraces criminality, right? You find people who will wear criminal as a badge of honor.
Sure.
And it boils down to
we're the have and the have-nots, and it's like, I'd rather be the worst of the have-nots than be a real crappy have.
Yeah.
At least if I spent 25 years inside prison, I could be a real bad boy.
Right.
But if I try to compete with the guys that have been out here making and living and earning for the last 25 years,
you're gonna die just a real bad boy, and that's it.
I'm gonna look like a real shitty, reformed human being.
And that's the thing. You've been reformed into what?
Right.
Right. And so what ends up happening is the criminal justice system is criminal. It is not helping anything at all.
Right.
These people, they do not come out rehabilitated. They do not come out able to function in the society. And on top of that, if you're a felon, you're totally cooked. You can't get a job as a felon. And it boils down to governing a city is like cooking a small fish. Don't poke it too much.
Right. So building the community, you want to have some rules.
Yeah.
Not too many rules.
Right.
Too
They gotta
many
be
rules,
basic.
You end up overcooking the fish.
Right, exactly. And over-criminalizing the society.
Over-criminalizing the society.
Right.
So that's the balance you want inside life. You want to be able to live in a community where you feel safe, there's enough rules where you feel protected, and there's some honor. And accountability.
There's no need for criminality.
But you also have a little bit of privacy, and people aren't going to throw you in prison because you have a difference of opinions.
Exactly.
On whatever it is. All right, I think there's another long one, man.
This was a good one.
Yeah.
Well, what do you guys think so far? What do you think of some of the ideas that we had to talk about today? And what do you think of the podcast so far?
Yeah, please leave a comment and let us know. Obviously, we had a little bit of a difficult time. It was a fun time.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to figure out what's the basis of a good community, building a community. And he had some good ideas. I had a couple of decent ideas as well, but I'm sure you got some. And we'd be happy to hear, maybe bring it up on another episode.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you very much for tuning in. Y'all have fun.